So today we're just going to go over some of the top 10 sort of things we see admins mess up on a year-to-year basis, just like little kind of quirks and things to keep in mind as you're going about your show cycle. So we're just going to go ahead and get right started with probably one of the biggest ones that is kind of missed, but at the same time also one of the most important ones. So if you're a show on ZAPP, then we keep your event listed on our events list page, which is right here. And it basically includes a list of the total number of events on ZAPP. So there's like 700, 800 events on ZAPP at any given time. And so if your application from last year is live, if your event has passed but you haven't renewed with us yet, then your event will still be listed on the events list page. You'll be listed on the Apply to Shows page if you're in your actual application cycle, meaning you're accepting applications, but you will be listed here. The only time we take you off is when it comes time to do edits. So the mistake that happens tends to happen when all of the edits have been made and you've put your application open date in your event information, but you haven't told us that you're ready to publish your event. We used to call this going live on ZAPP. We're renaming it to publishing event just so that it's a little bit clearer for new administrators coming in, whether they're on new events or old events. So we're now calling this publishing event. And so a lot of administrators aren't always sure what that means. And so they'll forget to ask us to publish the event. So what we do when it comes time to publish an event is look through all of the bits and pieces to make sure there's nothing that can prevent artists from checking out an application and essentially applying to your event. And so we do actually do that manually on our end. So it's not something that, oh, my accept application date is today, say, we can change this to today, say it's today. I think that means that it might go live or be published today. What it means instead is that you would start accepting applications that day, but you can't accept applications unless you've been published. So typically what we say around here is that we recommend publishing your event before you start accepting applications. What publishing your event does means that it goes onto this events list, and then at midnight in the time zone that you select right here, you will essentially begin accepting applications, and artists will be able to see that you're accepting applications. So that's probably one of the bigger ones. We try to send publish event check-ins just to remind people, okay, we see that your accept applications date is coming up. Do you want to publish this? But it's always a good rule of thumb just to kind of try and publish your event as soon as all of your edits have been made. That way you're not worried about your event being on ZAPP after your event, after it starts accepting applications, and you're not having to just kind of like worry about the whole process. It's there and it's been on ZAPP as long as it could be. And so an artist could find it even before your accept applications date, even if they couldn't apply. So we recommend publishing as soon as you can, but if not, asking to be published on your event date or the day before, on the accept applications date or the day before that. The other thing that kind of goes along, the next sort of mistake we see that goes along with the not asking for your event to be published would be not including certain factors that are going to allow us to set you live. So some of the biggest ones are going to be having these dates all in order. You don't have to worry about the jury start and jury end dates, but we have recently seen some application deadlines that are before their application start open dates. So we can't set you live if that is the case, and we will not change that for you. So it kind of creates a bit of a back and forth in which we have to tell you, okay, these dates are wrong, and you have to fix them and then ask us to publish the event again. We'll change this back to a post-accept applications date. And the same kind of goes with the accept invitation and purchase deadline. If that is before your accept applications date, artists won't be able to apply. I also have seen a weird circumstance lately of people's event dates being in the past, meaning that as soon as they save it in the past, they no longer have editing access to your event. So I wouldn't say that's a common mistake, but keep it in mind that if you do put your event dates in the past, you'll have to reach out to us to tell us to move that for you because it will make the event uneditable. That's kind of a fun little one. The other thing we see are event dates within the actual application itself that are in the past. We will publish your event if the dates that are in the past are in any of these boxes except for the legal agreements, because you'll still have the ability to edit those. So if we see that your event date is maybe one day off, or it still says 2019 and it needs to say 2020, we'll probably tell you that in the publishing your event email that you'll receive with the live link and all of that information. But we will still publish your event. What we won't publish your event, we won't publish your event when those dates exist in your legal agreement. So for example, this event says 2019 show, and this is probably a 2020 show since we're this late in 2019. So if I was looking at publishing this event, I would not set this event live. I would tell the administrator that, hey, you have old dates in your legal agreement, and legal agreements cannot be changed after we publish your event, because artists who are applying to that event are going to accept this legal agreement, and it kind of messes with the legality of it all to then change it on our end or your end. So we'll always try and catch that. The next one that we'll be looking for is a refund policy. Almost everybody has one nowadays. It's been a long time since I've seen someone without one, but if you don't have one, we'll usually let you know. We will still publish your event, but we'll still let you know. The next one that's going to be essential to publishing your event on the first request is going to be having medium categories. If you don't have a medium category, artists can't apply because it's essential to sort of the sorting systems within ZAPP that you have medium categories. So even if you are not jurying by medium category, you're not sorting by medium category, just adding a sort of all categories option can be the other way to go. I do know events that do that all categories option. The other one that's kind of an interesting one that we've been seeing more and more lately is if you have a radio button or a drop-down or a checkbox, anything with multiple options. Sometimes we see that the options have been changed to like a really high number, like maybe you only intended to have 4 options, but for some reason it lists 15. And so what that's going to look like on the artist side if you don't fill out all of those options is it's going to look like this with all of these kind of blank options. So we'll usually try to avoid setting you live if we are publishing your event. Still getting used to the terminology myself. We'll try to avoid publishing your event if we see all of these sort of blank answers. So it's something to keep in mind, particularly if you do have application questions. This is a really common mistake we see where they just haven't all been filled out like that. And so the last mistake that comes specifically with publishing an event is going to be not having an active jury fee. So if this is not active, an artist will stay in what's called the ready for submission status, and that means that they will not have the opportunity to check out an application for your event. So we almost always, if we see that it's unactive, we almost always activate it for you and then publish your event, and we'll let you know that we activated it. But what I also see sometimes is administrators who go in after the fact and they deactivate this product, even while their application is still accepting applications. It's still accepting applications. So that would be a big thing to keep in mind, that this always needs to be active. Artists cannot check out and apply to your event without checking out the specific product type of jury fee. So if all those things look good, we will activate your event and publish it on our site, and you should be good to go. Hopefully there'll be no back and forth. And so sort of moving into the next stage, assuming you've collected your applications now, what you're going to see is a lot of people in received. What we see with a lot of shows is that they'll go through and review all of these applications, and as they review them, they'll move them all to reviewed. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. And then what will happen is, this is more common in our big jury season, which is more in the March-April range. what will happen is administrators will reach out to us and ask why they're not seeing any applicants in their jury pool. And that's because applicants in the jury pool are only pulled from the received status. So it's a really simple fix. What you basically will do is, assuming at this point you've closed your application, the application deadline has passed, any late stragglers or any applications that needed to be edited have been edited, what you can do is you can just click on the reviewed status, and I kind of showed you this when I moved everybody to reviewed. But all the way down at the table, you always have the option to move all of a status into another status. So this is really convenient, particularly for the received and the reviewed category. So you can kind of review all your applicants, know that they're all good to go, move anybody who needs to be moved to maybe edit their application. You can do all of that. And then once everybody's good to go and you're ready to jury, you can just go ahead and move them back to received. That also allows you to have a status to use while artists are applying to your event. So you're reviewing artists, you're moving the reviewed artists into reviewed, and you're still receiving artists, so you know which ones are left to be reviewed themselves. But that's the main sort of error we see happen with the jury, that and then also not setting the jury into in progress. This isn't one of the things on my list, but I'll go ahead and mention it anyways. If the jury status is not set to in progress, if it's, for instance, set to not yet started, a juror will log in and they won't have the option to jury anything because on this end, you haven't set it to actually be in progress. So kind of looking more into the jury itself, the next sort of area we're going to talk about is going to be setting up a juror account. So juror accounts can be set up a couple of ways depending on how often you have used the jury tool. So if you're so there are some events that use the same jurors year after year. There are some events that switch it up every year. If you are using the same jurors, you'll be able to see a list of applicable jurors in this sort of jurors table. You can also therefore see the history of all the jurors that you've added, that you've created. And so if I was using the same juror for another show or for this show, I want to go into this juror account and say, okay, I actually want them to be able to jury this like Summer Hot Air Balloon Festival. And so I need to make sure that that checkbox is checked. Otherwise, they won't be able to have access to that event. But the error we actually see most often, because a lot of events do not use the same jurors year after year, is that when you go to add a juror, what will happen is, let's just say we create a juror for this event. Let's use this. Juror accounts have the exact same credential requirements as normal ZAPP users, so that means that their passwords need to have a capital, lowercase, and a number. And I believe they need to be over 7 characters. And so you'll just create an account, and this totally does not have errors typically. And then an admin will click add, and they'll think that they have assigned them to the event. But there's actually this kind of weird thing that happens where then you have to actually choose the event you want to assign them to. It's kind of the system's way of making sure that the actual credentials that you have used to create the account sort of work first before adding this other aspect. So then I'll want to go in and click this. So that's probably one of the bigger errors we see happen on the jury side. That just creates a bit of confusion where a juror contacts us and we contact you to tell you that you have to give them access to your show specifically. And if you have multiple shows and a juror is scoring multiple events, you'll want to give them multiple options. You'll want to check off multiple options as well. And so that's that. And then you have a juror that is assigned to your event. So after a jury has sort of been complete, there's usually like a communication period. Sometimes we see admins not necessarily communicate directly with artists, and they might just set their products live. What we recommend is that you can use either our communication tool or you can use a communication tool of your own. It totally doesn't matter. If you do use the communication tool in ZAPP, you'll have a record in ZAPP of all the emails you've sent. That is a benefit to it. But say we have finished our jury and we, had moved everybody into the correct status, we might, get ready to send this. But what we'll see happen sometimes is that maybe this invitation is sent too late. And so artists have already noticed the product and are kind of confused as to whether or not they're actually invited to the event. So they'll sort of see the product and maybe they'll purchase it, maybe they won't. So typically what we recommend here is just communicating with them around the time that you're going to release the booth products. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you through kind of what that would look like on ZAPP. And so we'll go back to the events management page to just kind of start from scratch. So I'm going to move everybody from received into invited just for the purposes of this demonstration. This is probably not how you're going to jury. And so the important thing about moving them into invited is that only artists who are in the exempt from jury status, the invited status, the accepted status, or the confirmed status are going to be able to purchase booth products at all. So what we can do here is we can say, okay, everybody's an invited. If you set up your jury, we'll talk a little bit more about the high current artist status a little bit later, but your high current artist status is probably still set to yes. And then I'll want to go into the product editor and make sure that all of my booths are activated and ready to go. And I'll go ahead and save them. And then what I've seen some events do very successfully is then they communicate with their artists. So as an artist right now, if I'm an invited, I'm not going to see that. I'm going to see that the jury is in progress because we left that high current artist status set to yes, and we set the jury status to in progress. So because of that, nobody's going to see their status. So what I've seen administrators do very successfully to ensure that sort of the communication happens at the same time as booth products is that they'll then go into the communication tool, select the invited artist, and sort of type out this email and give a time that the booth products are going to be active. So say I wanted to make them active at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time today. I would write that into this email, send it to the artist, and say this is when booths are going to be active. And then at 1:30, I would go into the jury administration and change the status to complete and no. And then as an artist, if I refresh this, now I can see that I'm invited. And it kind of all happens simultaneously in a way that kind of lets artists know that they're invited and lets them know booth products are available. And it all just happens at once, and there's not necessarily any confusion around that. So that's kind of the tip about communicating with them right after the jury administration. So kind of going along with that, the other thing that happens kind of in this booth buying stage is that either throughout your booth buying process or before the booth buying process, administrators might set up all of these booths, but they might leave them deactivated to start out with. This could be for a couple of reasons. One of them could be that if you exempt from jury artists can see booth products, but if you don't want them to be able to purchase them until a certain date, the best way to do that is going to be to deactivate all of these products until you're ready. But we do sometimes get questions from admins specifically about why artists can't see their booth products, and one of the culprits is typically that the booth products are not activated. So it's kind of one of the major steps to being able to buy booth products. So this goes for any type of product. If it's not activated in the ZAPP shop, it can't be seen. But if you're planning ahead, it's totally a good way to plan ahead to just sort of put all of this here and maybe deactivate them until you're ready. It just kind of depends on your own show cycle. Just knowing that artists won't be able to see the product unless it's active is kind of the essential point here. And the next one that's kind of interesting is that administrators sometimes move their artists to accepted instead of invited. And this is more of a best practices thing than a mistake. The cool thing about the invited status is that it gave me, as an artist, the option to accept or reject the invitation. If I move directly to the accepted status, then I don't have that option anymore, because theoretically, what is supposed to happen, what the system is kind of designed to do, is that if I'm invited as an artist and I accept the invitation, my application automatically moves into accepted, so that on your side, you can see that this artist is now accepted the invitation. Maybe they haven't bought a booth yet. Maybe you're not selling booths on ZAPP, so that's your indication to send them the booth payment information / any artist packets you may be sending. It also gives them the option to decline their invitation, which if you're running a wait list can be really helpful to know, because then you know, oh, I have one more spot available than I originally did, and I'm going to move one other high-performing artist from the wait list into the invited status and give them the opportunity to accept, reject, and purchase the booth. As an artist, just a quick note, as an artist, if I can bypass the accept and decline options if you are selling booths. If I see booths in the ZAPP shop, if I purchase a booth, I can move directly to the confirmed status. And that is kind of the next step to accepted. And so that's kind of how that works. It's just kind of an automation to make life as easy as possible for you guys. So I mentioned the high current artist status a little bit earlier in the webinar. So the high current artist status lives right here, and it's kind of one of the more overlooked areas and fields of ZAPP. There's basically two options, yes and no. It should always be set to yes during your jury, unless you're doing a rolling jury. If somebody is doing a rolling jury and wants to talk about that, we can totally do that. But if you're not doing a rolling jury, this should be set to yes. So this as it says right here, it does not allow artists to apply to your event or purchase booths. So this is very helpful for if you're trying to control that stream of booths and you're not ready to actually open them up yet. This is kind of the way to ensure that it opens when you're ready for it to open and not earlier. If it's set to no, then they'll have the ability to do that. So one of the errors that happens here is that this is set to yes when you're trying to accept booths, when you're trying to sell booth products. And as an artist, I could go into the cart and I won't see any products available for this show because it was set to yes. The other thing that can be kind of confusing about this is if this is set to no, but the jury is set to in progress, as an artist, I'll be able to purchase a booth product and I'll be able to see a booth product in the ZAPP shop, but I won't be able to see my actual status. So if I'm invited and say I'm not ready to buy a booth product and I want to just accept that invitation, I won't be able to actually do that until the jury is set to either complete or not yet started. Probably complete is going to be the answer. So once you're done with your jury, keeping those all straight is kind of a good way to make sure that you're not running into issues as artists purchase booths. The other sort of thing that can happen with purchasing booths is the accept invitation and purchase deadline. This is probably one of the emails we send out most often. We'll typically have an artist reach out to us and say, this show sent me an email that says I have until this date to purchase the booth, or this show sent me an email that said that I was moved from the wait list to the invited status and I need to go purchase my booth and confirm my attendance. And then we'll go ahead and we'll actually send you an email that says, hey, your accept invitation and purchase deadline, let's say it was the 4th, is in the past. And that's going to mean that any products at all in your cart are not going to be able to be seen. So you can kind of combat that one of two ways, depending on your cycle. You can either move it as needed. So you can have one hard accept invitation and purchase deadline. I know a lot of events that do, you have to purchase your booth by this date, and that's the accept invitation and purchase deadline. And we could say, hey, that's going to be December 31st, 2019. And then after that, you really can't purchase a booth because that was our deadline, so we need to know who is coming by that date. The other thing shows might do is more common in like a wait list situation where everybody purchases their booth by, say, December 31st, 2019, and then in the new year, you might go and say, okay, well, we have this number of spots available, and we're going to move some people to invited. and then those people can't. So you might do another round of this, so you might go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to move this to be January 15th. Always save. And then you can go in here and they'll be able to purchase booths. The other way to do that is just to check this little checkbox. I know some shows that just keep this checked the whole time. But the thing with this is that this will mean that these products are available for purchase up until the day your show starts. So there's kind of two ways to handle it based off of how you handle your show cycle itself. But that's kind of the accept, invitation, and purchase deadline, and I would say that that is high on the list of kind of forgotten features of ZAPP. And then our last mistake is going to, or maybe not mistake, but like area where people tend to forget things is going to be the media burn. So if you didn't know, ZAPP does offer one free media burn per year per event. And so what that means is a media burn is going to be all of the high quality, large images that these artists submitted with their applications. And it's going to come in a format that is basically show name, medium category, artist name, and then under that artist name's folder is going to be their images. Those can be used promotionally on your website or promotionally in other means based on how you go about handling that. But what we see happen is that when people request a media burn, what they'll do is they'll only ask for, say, the invited and the confirmed status, and then they will miss that they have people in the accepted status or in the waitlist status. Because shows typically want to be a little bit ahead of the game and want to have their images ahead of time so that they can start building out that sort of gallery area. So what we typically recommend for the media burns is that you ask for anything you could possibly need. So that's going to include typically exempt from jury, invited, waitlist, accepted, confirmed, and then awaiting payment by check if you are taking check payments. So that kind of just means that, like, you're probably going to catch anybody who is in your sort of pool to purchase booths and then possibly attend your event. I mentioned this mostly because we can only create one media burn for free, and after that, they're $20 each. So if you just get everything if you just request images for everything that you need the first time, then you'll never have any issues. You'll just need that very first link. But if you do need to then go back for whatever reason and get another status, that will cost a little bit extra. So just keeping that in mind is typically one of the things we see happen more in that sort of April, May time frame when summer shows specifically are asking for their media burn so that they can have images for their artists. And then there are some administrators who don't know we actually offer that. So it's really, that is really one of the things we find important, having good quality, large size images to put on your website for the artists who are attending so that your festival attendees can sort of browse through and see if they want to purchase anything before and or afterhand. And then one final little blurb is going to be about our lovely Help Center. So we tend to get a bunch of questions that can be referenced here. So if you ever had a question about refunding your artist, sometimes we can handle those refunds internally, and we do list out this whole little section on our document here. This isn't so much a mistake, it's so much as like a, hey, did you know this is, here's what this is. So this will just have all the information you could need about refunding an artist. It'll also have other frequently asked questions. If you're kind of looking for a quick answer, we will be out a little bit the 24th and the 25th, and then the 1st again, and we'll be leaving a little bit early on the December 31st. So if you do have questions, we have a lot of frequently asked questions. We have an administration guide that we do update every time we make an enhancement to make sure that it reflects what ZAPP can currently do, other webinars, if you're looking for e-blast information, marketing tips, just kind of a cool resource. And then, of course, you're always welcome to send us a ticket or email us. So if you want to ask about a media burn, then you can go ahead and put that in there. If you're kind of curious as to why a certain date doesn't seem to be working, or an artist can't check out a product, an artist is having trouble with the coupon code. Ticket's a really easy way if you don't have our email address quick at hand. It does look like I got one question on the sign-up form itself that was just about how to send out invitation forms, maps, and to use that for booth payments. So I can kind of go over that pretty quickly. The sending out invitation forms, the easiest way to do that is going to be selecting, find where these people are. It's going to be moving your artist to invited, and then using the communication tool, just fill in all of these fields. You can BCC anyone, you can send a copy, you can create a template, which is really new. You can modify one of our templates. Our templates are a little bit out of date with the new artist side, so I would recommend highly modifying those if you are going to use them. But if you have like a template you send out year after year, you can definitely just add it to this itself. And then you can attach a document, add in any, if you'd like, you can add in jury scores, comments. There's all of that information that can be added. So the attachment in this case could be, say, the map, or it could be a specific form that you want them to fill out. If the form's online, you could just link to it. And so that's how you would kind of send out an invitation form. A map would probably be listed on the event administration, the event page itself. So I would recommend putting it right here. I added one, I don't know what it is, just a picture of upload media. Depending on the type, it'll either open in like a little box on the artist side, or it will open a new tab. And so that's probably where you can put your site map. You can also, of course, email it to artists. If you don't want to use our communication tool, that's totally fine. You can just select the artist right here, and then scroll down and download the contacts form. You can download it as a CSV, a TAV, or an SLSX spell form. And then you can just pull the emails and names from this form, and you can pull it into, you know, whatever mail, email, marketing tool you may be using, and you can send things that way. Or you can pull it into however you typically do invitation forms. It just kind of depends on how you want to do it. But again, I do want to say that the really nice thing about this is that you will get this like communication list where you can see, oh, all these invited emails, and then like a waitlist email. So maybe you see a waitlist and then invited emails typically. And then for booth payments, you'll just kind of want to follow what we talked about earlier, making sure that they're created in this area, and then that artists are in either the exempt from jury, invited, accepted, or confirmed status, so that they can go ahead and purchase those booths. Artist who does purchase that booth, that will be automatically reflected when they move into the confirmed status. And that's kind of how they use invitations and booths and things like that. So thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you next month. And happy holidays.
Julia,